Welcome back, listeners, to BizBlend, where we dive deep into strategies that help entrepreneurs and professionals create more freedom and wealth in their lives. I'm your host, Sana, and listeners, today's conversation is going to be incredibly insightful, especially if you have ever wondered how to build real wealth without uprooting your life. And let me introduce my guest to all of you. Our guest, he has a remarkable story. Starting a company back in 2005, he built a successful consulting business. And instead of chasing the next big thing, he decided to put his profits to work. His research into long term financial security led him to real estate investing. And fast forward to today, he has developed a residential real estate portfolio, hear it out, worth $1.5 million dollars and growing, all without quitting his day job or constantly moving from place to place. That's annoying, right? And he's also the creator of the OOSTK strategy, helping others avoid costly mistakes and achieve the same kind of economic independence. So, if you have been thinking, I'd love to own multiple properties, but I'm too busy, this episode will give you a whole new perspective. And listeners, meet my guest, Axel Meierhoefer. So, Axel, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Sana, for having me.
Ah, brilliant. Axel, this is really going to be very, very interesting, much needed conversation. So, to begin with, first of all, I believe all of us would love to know what initially pushed you toward real estate investing while you were still running your company.
Well, the main thing was that I realized shortly after I started my consulting business, and it was obvious, like any startup, really small. It was basically just me and one support person, that there wouldn't be any kind of retirement plan or kind of investment plan or any kind of thing that I was used to from larger companies or before that working as a officer in the military. So I was like, okay, how can I do something that would also ultimately allow me to retire and have a good solid retirement income without depending on the state or on the government. And I looked around, and at the time, I discovered that real estate is what most people do when they have a long term horizon.
And this was before the 2008 economic crisis or after that?
No, it started actually before, and like you said in the intro, I started the company Axel Meierhoefer Consulting LLC in 2005, and shortly after that, I started looking. The thing is, initially, my thinking was that I would just literally just do it for our family. I had not really planned on creating programs and having mentoring and helping people actually do the investing. Initially, my intention was to just do it for our family.
Hmm. That's a really, really great thing. That's a really great thing. I absolutely admire, respect the intention behind this. And I think a lot of people, including myself as well, we would hesitate because, first of all, it would feel like too much to handle on top of a full time job. But definitely, your story, that turnaround, it really breaks that myth right away. So that's really, really inspiring, Axel.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about what this OOSTK strategy actually means and how it works, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Please go ahead, Axel.
Right. So this abbreviation or this little acronym OOSTK stands for Out of State Turnkey Investing. So first of all, I have to say my family and I, we were living in Santa Barbara, California. For anybody who knows the West Coast of the United States, that's a really pretty expensive area. And that means if you look around from an investing perspective, and I would say it doesn't matter really what kind of investing you want to do or what kind of type of investing you're into, you always want to invest in something where the numbers work well and where you can make either a good cash flow or good profit or so forth. And if you're in a very expensive area, that is almost impossible to do. So for me, the first thing was, yes, I live here. Yes, my company is here, but how can I invest somewhere further away, especially in real estate? So
Mhm.
out of state is that part, right? Like investing out of the state of California was where it originally started. And the TK, the turnkey investing is related, and I still would say it's a good resource if anybody wants to look in it. When I started to look at that, I discovered a book called The Turnkey Revolution by
Mhm.
Chris Closure. That's the name of the author. And he and his family literally created one of the many nowadays, many turnkey provider companies. And the thing that is very special about what he describes in the book, and that inspired me to make that the foundation for our investing model, is that there are different kinds of so-called turnkey providers, but the
Mhm.
kind that we want to find if we still want to maintain our job and don't have a whole lot of time to spend on the investing stuff is a provider that has three pillars, all under one roof or under one umbrella. So the first one is the company needs to have basically something like a contracting or building department. Why? Because they either build new properties that they ultimately sell, or they find properties that need renovation and then they go and renovate the properties and then put them out for sale. So it's basically like the building department is one important pillar. Then the second important pillar is basically almost like a real estate agency. So basically engaging with clients like organizations like ours, where they say, hey, these 2 or 3 properties are going to be finished from our building department and be available on the market for purchase. Who is
Mhm.
interested on buying them? Right, and then they help with all the process. You basically sign a contract, you go through the appraisal, all the things that you need to do anyway. If you ever wanted to buy real estate, it's that same process. So that second department in the turnkey provider is what I would say is basically like a real estate agency. And the third department is property management. And
Mhm.
even though these three departments in and of itself kind of make sense, and in many, many cases, especially in the US, they exist as individual companies. Now, where is this great benefit for having a turnkey provider who has all three pillars? Is think about it. If, for example, we want to buy one of their properties that they just finished renovating, we can talk to the people in the real estate department and say, hey, listen, you finished renovating this property, so you know everything that you did to this property to make it better and new. And
Mhm.
now you're also going to manage the property for us. So I want a warranty for the first year that you fix anything of any of the things that you touch during the renovation if it breaks. Why is that important? Because if anybody ever renovated or built something, yes, you try to do the best quality. Everybody tries to do their best. But when you actually move into a place that has freshly been renovated and you start using, turning on the faucets, you're using the bathtub, you're using the kitchen and all that kind of stuff, there is
Mhm.
a screw that was missed, a door that is squeaking, a faucet that is leaking, and those kind of things. It's all these little things that you can really only know if they work or not when you start using them on a regular basis. So with the warranty, we can say, okay, you touch pretty much everything in this property to renovate it. If any of those things don't work perfectly for our tenant in the first year, you cover it for no cost. So if you think about the alternative where all three departments would be separate companies, you would constantly just shift the blame around. You would need hours and hours and emails to get this all organized. In reality, with our out of state turnkey approach, in my own department, I have, for example, a cluster of properties, 4 properties in Ohio with the same turnkey provider. I talk to them like 20 minutes a month, right? Because there isn't really, I mean, we talk, we have a call because I want to know what's going on with my properties. And if there's anything, a tenant moves out, new tenant moves in, we do that via email. But fundamentally, I want to engage with them each month for 20, 30 minutes. And so I have 3 clusters around the United States. That basically means I'm talking about 1.5 hours per month to manage my portfolio, and our clients do the same.
Mm, that's really a very, very well explained. And I have a bunch of questions from here, Axel. So first of all, I think the most you know the biggest highlight from here is it's kind of you're aggregating all the three stages of any real estate transaction or process.
Yeah.
And do you have like teams, separate teams for all these three stages, like first the contract part of the renovation part and the rehab part of the buildings, apartments, and then for the client engagements you would be kind of having sales teams, agents on the ground, and then the post sale management and everything.
Well, that's basically the what you just described, those 3 things are what the turnkey provider company is providing to the market. So we become a client of theirs. We becoming an investor client, right? So they have found a property, renovated it, put it on the market. They say, "Hey, Axel, or do you have a client, Axel, who is interested in 123 Main Street, 3 bedroom, 2 bath house?" I look at it, we analyze it together with our clients. If we like it, we say, "Yep, we would wanna buy it from you." And then we sign 2 contracts. The one is to buy the house, and the second one is to manage the house.
Oh. Mm. So that's how you are able to, buy multiple properties even without moving or changing like jobs or locations.
Right, exactly. And see, what I like as an analogy for your listeners as well, and this is true, by the way, internationally, because the United States is pretty open in the context of bringing investments into the country and owning property through like a business. You start a business and then you own the properties. We do that for every one of our clients, regardless whether they are US citizens or residents or anybody else anywhere in the world. Um,
Mhm.
the point is that in this whole setup, it's not that different to your job, right? You
Mhm.
might have a job in a large, let's say, in your case, you might have a job at Tata, and they are all over the world, right? But you don't have to be all over the world because the contract that we are signing with, in our case, the turnkey provider, means we are hiring them as if they were our employees. We are the owners of the property. We bought the property from them, and now they are basically running, managing, renting, organizing, collecting the rent, all that stuff as if they were employed. That's why I always make a big point that our clients, besides getting the help to find the properties and buy the properties, my role as their mentor is also to a large extent to make them understand, yes, you have a normal job where you report to a boss, but when it comes to creating your real estate portfolio, you are the boss. They report to you. You talk to them once a month and they report to you the results of their work.
Hmm. Yeah, that really, really makes sense. That really makes sense. And I just want to bring in a bit of the risk aspect of this. Now obviously it's a capital intensive. Then there are risks like tenants not paying rent. Then there is property maintenance. Sometimes there are multiple market related aspects to consider here. So how did you manage those challenges initially while keeping your day job? I mean, what were there any specific systems or SOPs or operations in place, like processes?
Yeah, well, that's a great point, Sana. So
Mm.
the first thing, and I mentioned this earlier, a lot of people, when they talk about real estate, and you may have heard this, is this saying, good real estate investing is location, location, location.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that location is not important, but if I were to ask, what is your most important thing when it comes to real estate investing, is performance, performance, performance. What does that mean? if you look initially to say, is it even worth entertaining or looking at a deal? One thing that we use as kind of like a very quick measure is what's the price that is offered. Like the turnkey provider says, let's say, I have a house here that looks good, freshly renovated, costs $190,000. The first thing I look at through AI systems is how much rent can I get from this house? Not what the turnkey provider tells me. What can I research myself with a quick online search? How much rent can I get? If the rent is like 1800, 1850, 1900, something close in that range, and the rule that we are applying there is what's called the 1% rule. So you want to see that the price for the property and the rent, where the rent is about 1% per month of what you pay for the house. If you find that or something close, $190,000 house, $1,800 rent, you know you're pretty close. So why is that so important? Because when you run the numbers, and I don't want to bore your audience with all the math and stuff like that, but if you run all the numbers, then you will find out that with that kind of rent and that kind of price, you will make positive cash flow. And the other aspect to your question is the way we do this, and we help our clients to do it. And all the properties I have, we did it that way, is we only put 20% of the asking price down. So if we take that $190,000 house as an example, all we would put in is $38,000 or 20%, and the other 80% comes from the bank. Now,
Mm.
in a way of what you said, okay, risking and so forth, I would say most banks don't like to take big risk.
Yep.
So if the bank says, I give you 80% of the value of this property and you only have to put in 20%, I would say they're pretty sure that it's a reasonable risk. And the way they look at risk is, number one, where is it located? What is the economic environment of that location where the property is? But also, just like we do, how much rent can we make? So in an example like I just gave you, let's say for a super, super simple $190,000 house, $1,900 rent, exactly 1%. They know that the mortgage payment is only about a 50% of that rent. Right, so the risk is very low if you get to basically $1,900 rent and you only have to use $950 for the mortgage payment. That's a pretty low risk. The other thing they also know, because we get 30-year financing, every year the rent will keep going up a little bit, but the mortgage will remain the same. So every year the risk is getting lower. And for us, it means every year the cash flow is getting bigger.
Bigger. Mm, absolutely. Nice. And then, uh, Axel, some financial, and this is a bit, from a personal perspective, that I would like you to share that some financial experts would say that focusing on your business or higher earning skills, it has a better ROI plus stability than buying real estate. So, how would you respond to that?
Well, the comparison that I see and hear a lot is a little bit like this old saying of comparing apples to oranges. And I can explain real quick how I mean this. Let's just say you had the choice. You could buy $100,000 in stocks on the stock exchange or $100,000 worth of real estate. I know there are no $100,000 houses. It's just to easily demonstrate the difference. So if you want to buy the $100,000 stock, you have to put the $100,000 into the stock exchange, whether you buy one company or more, doesn't matter. If you want to buy the $100,000 house, you only need to put $20,000 in. Or if you want to make it comparative to say, I have 100,000, I want to invest that, you can buy five $100,000 houses. So now on day one, you have $100,000 worth of stock or $500,000 worth of real estate. That's the first difference. Now, the other thing is that people often forget. If I take my $100,000 house, and let's say it's a very normal area, no massive improvements, changes, no big industrial development, and that
Mhm.
property is only increasing in value, let's say by 3% per year. I think anybody would say 3% is not a lot, and it's definitely significantly less than the stock market. Now let's look at that a little bit in more detail. So the $100,000 house next year after 3% is worth $103,000, correct?
Okay.
So I only put in 20,000. So 3,000 on 20,000 is not 3%, it's 15%. So first,
Mm.
before anything else, the stocks that somebody bought with the same amount of money have to increase by 15% to just match my increase in value for the house of 3%. Now, the next thing is I have been collecting rent. And let's just say for my $100,000 house, I got, let's say, a little bit more than $100 in cash flow per month. So over the whole year that I owned that house, I made $1,500, right? So
Mhm.
that is basically another, let's see, 1,500 is 10, is another 15% almost
Mhm.
on my 20,000 that I put in, right? And I'm only counting the cash flow, not paying the mortgage or any, only what is left over at the end of the month.
Yep.
And then on top of that, the government says, by the way, because you have a house, we allow you to depreciate your house as if you bought a little engine for your company. So I can depreciate those $100,000 over 27 years in the United States. So that comes out to round about $1,000 per year for a $100,000 house. So I'm making another $1,000 in tax savings. If you take it all together, with 3% depreciation, I'm making about 30% in gains. Now, you might say I have stocks in the stock market where I made 30% of gains. But if you look longer term, the S&P 500, which is one of the biggest 500 companies in the United States, on average, depending on how you're calculating, makes 7 to 10% gains over long periods of time, 10, 15, 20 years. And with my property, I make between 20 and 30%. It's no competition.
Mm.
It's no competition, right? So the thing why I say apples and oranges, if you only say my stocks improved in value by 10%, your real estate improved in value by 3%, it looks like it's the same and the stocks are much better than the real estate. If as soon as you look at, okay, but I only needed to put in 20% and you needed to put in 100%, and I get rent and I get depreciation and tax benefits, when you add it all together, it's no competition.
It's no competition. Yeah. The ROI definitely is more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also you have to keep in mind, I like sometimes when people ask me the question about the stock market to give a little bit of an example because you asked me at the beginning of our conversation, how did I get started and why did I get into real estate? You have to keep
Mhm.
in mind in the years 2002, 2003, that was when the dot-com bubble, as everybody called it, on the stock exchange basically exploded. All these kind of dog.com and restaurant.com and all these dot-com companies failed, and the stock market, the Nasdaq especially, went down by something like 30%.
Mhm.
Now, the fact that stuff goes up and down is not the tricky thing. What you need to ask yourself, let's just assume you did your investment for these $100,000 that we just spoke about in
Mhm.
2000, just before that crash. And then the question is, okay, how long does it take for the market to go up again until I have again a market value of my $100,000 that I started with? Do you have any idea how long that took?
No, I'm afraid not.
Oh,
Except,
took 17 years.
wow.
17 years to recover from the crash. Now,
Mm.
in real estate, because it's a much lower volatility, it doesn't go up by 10% and down by 20% or anything like that. It's very, very steady, relatively slow, but very dependable. So you can really build a portfolio and you don't have to expect these kind of jumps and falls and all that kind of stuff. And on top of it, like I mentioned earlier, you have income the whole time from rent, right?
Mhm.
So It's a very different asset class. It's a little bit real estate is a little bit more like bond investing rather than stock investing, with the difference that in bond investing, you again have to put in 100% of the investment amount, and you have to
Mhm.
wait the whole time until you get the money out, where in real estate, you only put in 20% of the investing amount and you get money out every month. So
Mm.
there are, on first glance, it is not that obvious. And I also believe a lot of people would like to invest in real estate. And that's why I basically offer this mentoring service, because I had to learn all of this between 2006 and now, basically for the last 20 years. I have learned a lot of these things, and the markets changed and the rules changed. But one thing that has not changed is when you really look at the numbers, it's still no competition, even if your real estate only increases by 3% per year. And every so often, right, like in 2021, for example, after COVID, it
Mhm.
increased much more. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is, compared to the stock market, the real estate prices have never really come down since 2021. They jumped a lot and then they stayed there, right? So it's a little bit like I always say, it's a little bit like the groceries, right? They say, okay, the prices increased by 20%, but they
Yep.
never really go down, right? If the milk goes from $2 a gallon to $3 a gallon or a liter, yes, it may not go up further for a year or two, but it's never going to go down back to the $2.
It's driven by need. It's definitely driven by need.
Well, that's one thing, but it's also there is, and this is not financial, has nothing to do with mathematics. There is a little bit of getting comfortable with something,
Yeah.
right? If you ask somebody 30 years ago, how much does, I'm just giving an example, how much does a car cost? And people would say, I can find a car between 15 and $20,000. You ask like the next generation today, how much does a car cost? The same car would be 35 to $40,000. But they're not saying it's excruciatingly expensive, 35 thought. No, it's the normal price.
Yeah.
But for somebody that originally bought their first car for like $12,000, they say, are you crazy to pay $50,000 for a new car? I would never do that, right? It's what you have basically gotten comfortable with, what you think is normal. And when you look, if you have a little bit of time perspective, you will see there are so many things. How much did it cost to send a letter? How much did it cost to fill your shopping cart to get your groceries for the week? There's and by the way, in real estate, it's the same thing, right? I know that the first house in Santa Barbara that I mentioned when we moved there to Santa Barbara, California, the first
Mhm.
house we rented to find our final house that we ultimately bought, the house what we rented was from an owner who had bought it in 1967. And he had paid at the time $67,000. That same house in 2002, when we moved there, was listed for $350,000.
Oh
Now,
my.
that was already pretty crazy for me.
Yeah.
Today, today that same place is $800,000,
Right.
right? So, but why is this? It sounds crazy, right, when we hear this, but you have to also look at the other side. And
Mhm.
this is, and people forget to think about it that way. The money that you have, regardless in which country you are and which currency you have, these little pieces of paper that you have or what is on your bank account, is a representation of purchasing power.
Yep.
So when you say, okay, I have $100, what can I buy with that today? And you get a certain number of things and you wait for 10 years and you look, I have $100. What can I buy with that? What you see, why is it so much less, is because the purchasing power of that $100 bill has gone down massively in
Mhm.
all currencies, right? So that's actually, it's not that the value, like I like to use the analogy of a house. If you really think of a house that has,
Mhm.
let's say, 1,000 square feet or 100 square meters of living space, the only reason that people pay more and more and more rent for that same living space is because the purchasing power of that dollar or that rupee or that euro is going down every year. It's not that the 100 square meters or 1,000 square feet living space is somehow different. It's not more, it's not less, it's not different. The vaults are still in the same place. So the purchasing power of your dollar bills or your euro bills or whatever, that's what's going down. So you need to give more of it because each individual thing is worth less. The house and the space that you're renting is still the same today, 10 years, and 20 years.
Wow. That's a really, really effective example, really great example. I really
Well, that's also why we always, if you go back to your job because you said, you can do this investing and keep your job, this is why you need a raise, right? Because the money that you get for your time that you're exchanging with your employer, the money is losing its purchasing power. So if you wouldn't get a raise, you can buy less and less and less and less.
yeah, that's right. Wonderful. Axel, so before we wrap up, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and check out all the resources that you're providing, what would be the best way?
Well, we have the website idealwealthgrower.com. And if you go to that website, or you can just put it in on Google or any other search engine, in the top right hand corner, you see a button that says book a call. And I always like to have a complimentary conversation. Let's just talk to each other, find out what your situation is. And if we like each other and have a good vibe and think we can help each other, then you can become a client and then we help you.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to have all the details in the show notes. And Axel, this was such a powerful conversation. It was indeed a masterclass that we explored through your journey. And I think I believe we don't need to quit our jobs or move across country or have millions in bank to start building wealth, especially through real estate. I believe we just need the right strategy, intention, and mindset. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me.
So, to all the listeners, I hope you're walking away with a very fresh perspective on how you can use the resources you already have to create financial independence, especially in today's age and times. If this episode inspired you, please share it with someone who has been curious about real estate investing. And don't forget to connect with Axel, connect with him, book a call with him. I'll mention all the details in the show notes for all of you. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss these deep dive conversations and masterclasses. Until next time, I'm Sana, and here's to blending your business and your life in the smartest way possible. Cheers.